Hey, welcome to the QB School. Fired up. All sorts of good stuff to talk about. Let's get it going. Daniel, right out the gate, deep ball, huh? All right. I mean, to be honest with you, Daniel, how to throw a deep ball is a good question. For me, subtle things change, but to me, it's throwing a ball is throwing a ball. I don't know if you're a golfer, but you don't really want to change your stroke very consistently if you're hitting a, 2-iron and or you're hitting a 9-iron. You'd like it to be as consistent as possible as far as what that rhythmic kind of stroke feels like, as far as what you can make repeatable. And so for me, throwing the deep ball, you're obviously going to try to generate a little bit more torque, a little bit more rotational force, but you don't necessarily want, I've seen a whole bunch of people talk about different launch angles and things like that. To me, unless you're throwing like a Hail Mary where you're just going to wind up and give it everything you possibly got at the end of a half or game, very rarely are you going to throw the ball over 40 yards in a game, even in the NFL. That might happen, 2 or 3 times a game, if that, on a go route or on a post over the top. And so for me, it was never anything that we necessarily practiced, consistently. I'd say the only way that we ever really practiced throwing the deep ball is just the old school, like bucket, bucket 42, 44 yards in the league for a go route on the outside and just drop it in the bucket. I know for me personally, throwing the deep ball, I always preferred to throw it to my right. And this is going to sound strange, but go with me here. Now, granted, I was also like a 3/4 guy as opposed to an over-the-top guy, and I guess I could like a change angle guy. But if I was going to throw it, it was going to be normally on like my smooth stroke. It was kind of a 3/4 throw. And so my ball, I always felt like went a lot more left to right than other people. Like if you watch someone who throws right over the top, their ball almost doesn't go as much left to right with as much movement. And so I used to be really nervous. What did I say? Throwing to the right side? I meant throwing to the left side. Throwing to the right side, I felt like I would push it towards the sideline too much because I'd get jacked up and the thing would tail and spin to the right. So I always preferred to throw go balls to the left for me, because if I let it go too wide, I felt like it always kind of came back to the center. It was just kind of a little draw or a little fade, whatever the difference is. You can tell how much I golf. But this idea being to kind of fold it back in, as opposed to if I threw it to the right, it would always kind of, I never want to throw it out of bounds and do a never in history ball, where I can already feel the questions. What does never in history ball mean? Never in history ball means that never in the history of football has anyone caught a ball that goes out of bounds. So you got to give your guy a chance. And so for me, I always practiced throwing a go ball to the right when I was on my own. I used to, for probably half a decade of my life, I would have a bag of balls in my truck with a small little trash can, not a small trash can, but not like a, like a massive recycling thing, like a normal size trash can you would see like back in the day at a park. I had that in my car, and I would hold the duffel bag of balls would go in there, and it would just live in my car. And so when I worked out or after coming home from the gym to go out there and throw, especially as I got older and I didn't have a whole lot of friends who were, available at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, I would just go throw buckets and go balls. And so for me, whether it was like in the red zone fades or slot fades or, down the field kind of go balls on the outside. And for me, I always wanted to practice going to my right, just because that little fade of it. So I would practice with the little fade depending on what your release looks like. But to me, it's just repetition. It's just a stroke. It's just like shooting a 3-pointer. You need to find your stroke, find what that landmark looks like, what the arc looks like. That's the other thing about throwing a deep ball. There's a fine line on arc or trajectory. I think most young players, especially, the high schoolers that I've been around, if you struggle for arm strength, you're going to come out and have a flat trajectory ball, which is just a lot harder to be accurate because there's a lot less forgiveness for the wide receiver if that thing comes out flat, like a line drive, hit up to the center fielder. I'm looking for balls that are dropped out of a helicopter. I want like, Chris Bryant home runs. That's what I think of back in the day when I remember watching him play at USD. Those things were dropped out of a helicopter. They were coming down so hot. And so we try to figure, you want it up as high as you can where you can turn it over nice and easy and be able to control it. You don't want to send it, straight up like a rocket, but you can't have that thing come out flat like a skunk missile, just like a grounder coming out, not giving your guy a chance. So I would work trajectory, And then I would work just go balls with a bucket. You can go to park and get a real trash can, grab the bag out and just use the empty. And if you don't want to buy one. And so lots of different ways to do it. The other reason I liked it is because you could practice yourself. You know, that's the one thing about football is it's hard to practice by yourself, especially if you're a quarterback, you need someone to throw to. But if you have enough balls, you can go out there with a trash can, work on the deep ball. And then I always remember, you know, if you watch nowadays, a bunch of quarterbacks do it at the end of practice, but we used to do it every Friday on most teams in the league in season. You do like a accuracy competition. And so we used to throw a lot of buckets, a lot of that exactly into trash cans or nets. And I always remember being like, oh man, if they put it to the right, I'm going to be in trouble. If they put it to the left, this thing's a wrap after about 2 throws. And so it was just a different, kind of like, you know, basketball. Like if you got a shot, like I like shooting in the corner, you know, that's my shot as opposed to, you know, at the top of the arc. And so just different things like that. It just takes reps, but don't lose your mind. Try to do anything outside of that. Just find your comfort zone, practice it, work the stroke, and then find opportunities, different ways to practice it.